Welcome back to another tutorial. This one we're going to look at the skeletons from Underworlds. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm experimenting with sort of my own contrast paint type of a thing here. So these guys are undercoated with the bone color, just with the airbrush over top of a white primer. And what I'm doing is mixing up some washes with actually watercolor inks and some flow improver. The idea was to do that on the bones, and then I wouldn't have to really do much more. In the end of the day, it didn't really turn out, so the contrast experiment was not successful. But here I am doing it anyway. So brown ink mixed with a bit of regular paint, and working my way on some of the fur there. So the idea was that if I could limit the number of layers that I had to do, that would help speed things up. I don't think I got the mixes quite right, so I ended up having to do a lot of the work over again. Some of the areas did turn out really nice, like some of those shields was just a simple wash and that was it. This, the red actually probably was the worst thing that turned out. I ended up having some sort of, like the pooling in the cracks in the folds ended up being a bit chunky. So clearly I messed something up there. And with the colors being semi-transparent, I ended up having to sort of paint over a lot of the things anyways. Regardless, these guys painted up pretty quick. There's not a lot of complicated things on them. Probably spent the most time at the very end doing some of the weathering sort of looks. So here I am painting up some of the gray cloaks. I did find that the technique of doing this wash, semi-transparent wash as a base coat, kind of helped in some ways. And the gray ended up being a lot better for me than it has been in the past. But the red was a lot more work, I think, to do it this way. I can't wait to try out the contrast paints and see what they're like. I'm not sure how many I'm going to buy, but probably grab a couple of them and give it a shot. So doing a Agrex Earthshade wash here on all of the sort of metal bits, things like that. Some red mixed with a bit of brown to redo some of the shading here. So just kind of painting in the shades myself. Rhinox Hide and Evil Sun's Scarlet there. And just to help touch up the transitions. Some of the transitions were very stark, and so this helps kind of blend it in a little bit better. Okay, a bit more Rhinox Hide. This is on all the leather bits. Now I used Rob Paint's models recipe sort of for this leather, so it's the sort of the Rhinox Hide base, and then the working on some dry brushing here. So I'm skipping steps or going back and forth between different colors. Now doing some edge highlighting on the skulls and stuff like that, just help bring out some of the raised areas there. I like to alternate between colors rather than finishing all one color at once, and that allows me to sort of touch things up as I go in between the different things. So if I paint over another area, the next layer that I do, I can fix it up. Going around all the skeleton bits with Agrex Earthshade and just touching up some of the shading. Some of the shades didn't all land exactly where I wanted it to. Painting on some of the grays here. Again, it was a bit too transparent, the wash layer that I did, so I'm kind of painting over a lot of it. But doing that also semi-transparent and sort of maintaining some of that shade from that original ink wash. And then just highlighting it up a bit more. Like I said, some of these grays ended up being better transitions than I'm used to, so it worked out kind of okay. Working on the next bits here. So doing edge highlights on all the leather. Like I said, I used a leather recipe from Rob Paint's models, and I think I really like how his turned out. I'm trying to do kind of a quick version of that. And I think it turned out nicely on some of these guys. Just doing a bit of bone colored scratches and stuff on the edges of them, and then a little null and oil wash to finish it off. Okay, using the patina finish here, technical paint, going over all the sort of coppery gold stuff. I figured anything that was not silver was going to be this copper or bronze or whatever, and so it would get this oxide look to it. using a bit of Rise of Rust to rust up some of all the metal bits that aren't copper, and just using an old brush and kind of stippling and sort of semi-dry brushing a bit there. I do go back after with a more fine brush and water down and just sort of get some, around the rivets or whatever, that sort of thing, just painting around the edges of them and getting any bits that I missed with this sort of rough wash, or no, rough dry brush. Doing final edge highlights of all the red. Silver dry brush here, so just trying to get all the sharp edges so they look like they've worn through fresh silver, and same with the blades and stuff. And doing a final highlight on the grays here, just sort of little edges on everything. And that's about it. So these guys, fun to paint, quick to paint. Probably would have been quicker if I hadn't tried the experiment with my other things. But I'm really looking forward to trying some contrast paints. I think it's a great concept. I'm not sure if it works with my style, where I like to be a bit sloppy with my base colors. With contrast, it looks like you're going to have to be pretty accurate when you're laying down the colors. Otherwise, you have to touch up the base color when you do the next wash. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this. Be sure to check out my blog, and see you next time.